Right now, as you're watching this, you think you're experiencing time moving forward, moment by moment, second by second. But what if I told you that's completely backwards? What if past, present, and future are all happening simultaneously, and you're just experiencing a thin slice of a much larger reality? Think of it this way. Imagine you're an ant walking across a photograph, only able to see the tiny section directly under your feet. You'd think that small patch is the entire picture. That's exactly how we experience time. We're moving through a four-dimensional reality but only perceiving our current cross-section. Neville Goddard discovered this decades ago. He realized that all possible versions of your future already exist in what he called the fourth dimension. The struggle, the success, the breakthrough you want, it's all there, happening now. Most people never learn this because understanding it would fundamentally shift how power operates in our world. There's a specific technique for accessing these other timelines, for literally selecting which future you experience. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to navigate between different possible versions of your life. Picture yourself as a two-dimensional being living on a flat piece of paper. Your entire universe consists of length and width. That's it. You can move forward, backward, left and right, but the concept of up or down doesn't even exist in your vocabulary. Now imagine a three-dimensional sphere slowly passing through your paper world. What would you see? Just a series of circles appearing and disappearing, starting small, growing larger, then shrinking again until they vanish completely. You'd have no idea that these circles were actually cross-sections of something far more complex, a complete sphere existing in a dimension beyond your perception. This is exactly what's happening to you right now, except you're the two-dimensional being, and reality is the sphere. Most people live their entire lives trapped in what I call three-dimensional thinking. They experience reality as a fixed sequence of cause and effect, where the past determines the present, and the present determines the future. It's like being locked in a prison cell where the walls are made of your own limited perception. Let me break this down for you. The first dimension is simply a point. No relationships, no movement, just existence. The second dimension adds length and creates the possibility of relationships between points. You get lines, shapes, the beginning of complexity. But it's still flat, like living your entire life on that piece of paper I mentioned. The third dimension is where most of humanity gets stuck. This is where we add depth and height. The world your physical senses can detect. You can see objects, touch them, measure them. Everything seems solid, permanent, and governed by physical laws. This is the dimension of your job, your bank account, your current relationships, your health conditions. It's the world where you believe that to change anything, you must take physical action. Here's where it gets fascinating. Three-dimensional thinkers look at their circumstances and say, this is just how things are. If they're struggling financially, they believe they need to work harder, get another job, or wait for some external opportunity. If they're lonely, they think they need to go out more, join dating apps, or hope someone will notice them. If they're unhealthy, they focus solely on diet and exercise, treating symptoms rather than causes. This creates what ancient wisdom traditions called the carnal mind, a way of thinking that's completely governed by physical senses and external circumstances. When something happens to three-dimensional thinkers, they react. When they want something to change, they push against current conditions with physical effort. They're like someone trying to change their reflection by manipulating the mirror instead of changing what's being reflected. But here's what Thoth understood, and what modern physics is finally catching up to. The third dimension is just one slice of a much larger reality. The fourth dimension contains something that will completely revolutionize how you think about your life. All possible timelines exist simultaneously. Think of this like a film reel. When you watch a movie, you see one frame at a time, creating the illusion of movement and linear time, but the entire film exists, complete on the reel. The beginning, middle, and end are all there simultaneously. The projectionist can access any frame instantly. In the fourth dimension, your past, present, and all possible futures exist just like that film reel, complete and accessible. Neville Goddard spent decades experimenting with this concept, and he discovered something extraordinary. Through directed imagination, human consciousness can access this fourth-dimensional perspective. Instead of being trapped in the linear sequence of cause and effect, you can actually select which timeline you experience. This is where we encounter the two types of human perception, the that determine everything about your life experience. The first is what Scripture calls the natural mind, the consciousness that's completely identified with physical senses. This mind says, "I'll believe it when I see it." It waits for external conditions to change before internal states can shift. The second type is the spiritual mind, controlled not by physical senses but by conscious imagination. This mind understands that internal states create external conditions, not the other way around. It operates from the principle, "I'll see it when I believe it." The ancient texts that reveal these deeper dimensions of consciousness have been preserved in works like the Kybalion, which explores the Hermetic principles that govern reality creation. If you want to dive deeper into these foundational concepts, I've made the complete Kybalion available as a free ebook through our Insights Academy newsletter, where we explore the practical application of these timeless principles. Most people never realize they have a choice between these two types of perception. They remain trapped in three-dimensional thinking, believing that their current circumstances are permanent fixtures of reality. They look at their bank balance and think, "I'm poor." They look at their relationships and think, "I'm alone." They look at their health and think, "I'm sick." Each of these statements assumes that current conditions define identity and determine future possibilities. But from a fourth-dimensional perspective, these are simply temporary cross-sections of a much larger reality. Just like that two-dimensional being seeing circles instead of recognizing the complete sphere, three-dimensional thinkers see isolated circumstances instead of recognizing the infinite possibilities available to them. Here's a concrete example of how this plays out. A three-dimensional thinker loses their job and immediately goes into survival mode. They update their resume, start networking frantically, and worry about paying bills. Their entire focus is on finding another job within their current skill set and salary range. They're reacting to circumstances and trying to manipulate external conditions. A four-dimensional thinker approaches the same situation completely differently. They recognize that losing the job is simply one frame in their film reel, and they have access to infinite other frames. Instead of reacting to circumstances, they consciously select a new timeline. They might use this transition to imagine themselves in their ideal career, earning the income they desire, doing work that fulfills them. They understand that their imagination, properly directed, will arrange external circumstances to match their internal state. The difference is profound. Three-dimensional thinking creates victims of circumstance. Four-dimensional thinking creates conscious creators of experience. Breaking free from this dimensional prison requires understanding that your current circumstances are not facts about reality. They're simply the cross-section you're currently experiencing. The complete sphere of possibility exists right now, and your consciousness is the projectionist that determines which frame appears on the screen of your experience. Look around at your life right now. Your relationships, your bank account, your health, your opportunities. What you're seeing isn't some cosmic accident or the result of forces beyond your control. You're looking at the most accurate mirror that's ever existed, reflecting back to you with mathematical precision exactly what you've been projecting from within. Most people spend their entire lives believing they're victims of circumstance, that reality happens to them rather than through them. They think the universe has favorites, that some invisible force is keeping them down while blessing others. This fundamental misunderstanding keeps billions trapped in cycles of struggle, never realizing they're holding the paintbrush to their own experience. Here's what Thoth understood that modern humanity has forgotten. Reality has no agenda. Zero. It doesn't care if you're good or bad, deserving or undeserving, spiritual or materialistic. The universe operates like the most sophisticated mirror imaginable. It can only reflect what stands before it. And what stands before it is your consciousness, broadcasting its assumptions, fears, beliefs, and expectations 24 hours a day. Think about a physical mirror for a moment. If you stand in front of one frowning, does the mirror decide to show you smiling instead? If you're wearing torn clothes, does the mirror upgrade your outfit out of pity? Of course not. The mirror has no choice but to reflect exactly what you present to it. The universal mirror works identically, except instead of reflecting your physical appearance, it reflects your internal state of being. This creates a perfect system of responsiveness, not judgment. When you consistently hold thoughts of scarcity, worrying about money, assuming you can't afford things, feeling anxious about financial security, The mirror universe has no choice but to reflect back circumstances that match that energetic signature. It's not punishing you for negative thoughts. It's simply doing what mirrors do. The same mechanism works when someone dwells on limitation. I'm not smart enough. I'm not attractive enough. I don't have the right connections. The universe mirror receives these broadcasts and faithfully reproduces experiences that confirm these assumptions. Again, there's no malice here, no cosmic conspiracy against you. The system is working exactly as designed. Here's where it gets really interesting. When you assume unworthiness, believing deep down that you don't deserve respect, love, or success, you literally attract people and situations that treat you as unworthy. The mirror doesn't question your self-assessment. It simply reflects it back through your external experiences. But here's the twist that makes this whole thing even more profound. You weren't supposed to remember any of this when you came here. Before entering this dimensional experience, each consciousness makes a choice to undergo what we could call voluntary forgetfulness. Think of it like entering the most immersive virtual reality game ever created, one so convincing that you temporarily forget you're playing a game at all. This amnesia isn't a bug in the system, it's the main feature. Why would consciousness choose to forget its own creative power? Because authentic experience requires genuine stakes. If you consciously knew you were creating every moment of your reality, every emotion would be diluted, every challenge meaningless, every triumph hollow. The forgetfulness allows for real surprise, genuine fear, authentic joy, and meaningful growth. It's like watching a movie you've seen 100 times versus experiencing a story for the first time. The emotional impact comes from not knowing what happens next, from believing the stakes are real. This dimensional experience works the same way. The temporary amnesia about our creative nature allows consciousness to have authentic adventures in limitation, struggle, love, and breakthrough. But here's the paradox. While we've forgotten consciously, the creative mechanism never stops operating. It continues running in the background through our unconscious assumptions, our inherited beliefs, our emotional patterns, and our mental habits. We're still creating every moment of our experience. We're just doing it unconsciously and often chaotically. This is where human suffering actually comes from. Not from external punishment or bad luck, but from unconscious, undirected use of immense creative power. It's like having a loaded weapon with no training in how to use it safely. The power itself isn't dangerous. The unconscious, chaotic application of it is what creates havoc. The elegance of this system is also its brutality. It gives you exactly what you're being, no more, no less. If you're being fearful, you get experiences that validate fear. If you're being grateful, you get experiences that generate more gratitude. If you're being victim-minded, you get victimizing experiences. If you're being powerful, you get empowering circumstances. The universe doesn't argue with your self-concept. It doesn't try to convince you that you're worthy if you believe you're worthless. It simply says, okay, you're the boss, and reflects back whatever energetic signature you're consistently broadcasting. This knowledge remains hidden for good reason. If everyone understood that reality is a perfect mirror responding to consciousness, entire systems of social control would collapse overnight. Governments depend on citizens believing they're powerless. Corporations need consumers who feel lack and inadequacy. Religious institutions require followers who see themselves as separate from divine power. If people truly grasped that they're unconsciously creating their financial struggles through their relationship with money, that they're attracting disrespectful treatment through their own sense of unworthiness, that they're manifesting health problems through chronic stress and fear patterns, the entire victim-based economy would crumble. Look at your current circumstances as a detective examining evidence. Your relationships reflect how you relate to yourself. Your financial situation mirrors your internal relationship with abundance and worth. Your health reflects your emotional states and stress patterns. Your opportunities match your expectations and assumptions about what's possible for someone like you. The mirror universe isn't showing you what you deserve, it's showing you what you're being. And the moment you change what you're being internally, the external reflection has no choice but to shift accordingly. This isn't positive thinking or wishful hoping. This is understanding the fundamental operating system of reality itself. The question isn't whether this is true. The question is, what are you going to do with this understanding? Here's what the spiritual gurus won't tell you about desire. They've got it completely backwards. For centuries, you've been fed this narrative that desire is the root of suffering, that wanting things makes you selfish, that true enlightenment means transcending all earthly wants. It's perhaps the most damaging lie ever told about human consciousness. Let me show you what's really happening. Desire isn't your enemy. It's the fundamental force that creates reality itself. Without desire, nothing in this universe would move. No galaxies would spin, no planets would form, no life would emerge. Desire is the cosmic engine that drives all creation, and you are its most sophisticated expression. Think about this. Every single thing you see around you right now began as someone's desire. The chair you're sitting on, the device you're watching this on, the building you're in, all of it started as a want, a wish, a burning desire in someone's consciousness. Yet somehow, we've been programmed to believe that our desires are obstacles to overcome rather than instructions from the universe itself. Here's where it gets fascinating. Your consciousness processes thousands of fleeting wants every single day. I wish it would stop raining. I want some coffee. I hope traffic isn't bad. Most of these dissolve into mental noise because they carry no real power behind them. But occasionally, something different happens. A desire emerges that captures and holds your attention with magnetic force. This isn't random. This is the universe communicating through you. When you examine the mirror universe principle we explored earlier, you start to see how this mechanism actually works. Remember, external reality has no agenda of its own. It simply reflects what consciousness projects onto it. Your sustained desires are the projector, and the three-dimensional world is the screen. But here's the key. Only desires that maintain your focused attention gain the power to reshape that reflection. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. You've been taught that wanting things for yourself is selfish, that pure desires should somehow be selfless. This is psychological manipulation at its finest. Every desire, without exception, carries personal gain in view. Even the desire to help others feels good to you. That's why you do it. This isn't a character flaw. It's the precise design that allows individual consciousness to function as a creative force. The all, that infinite consciousness we discussed, didn't fragment itself into billions of individual perspectives by accident. It did so specifically to experience the exquisite pleasure of desiring, seeking, and achieving through each unique point of awareness. You are literally the universe experiencing itself subjectively, and your desires are how it explores infinite possibilities of creation. This is where most people get stuck in three-dimensional thinking. They believe desire means lack, that wanting something proves you don't have it. But from the fourth-dimensional perspective we've been exploring, the opposite is true. To truly desire something is evidence that it already exists as a real possibility in the quantum field of potential. Your desire is actually your consciousness recognizing something that's already yours in the higher dimensions. Here's the practice that changes everything. Immediate obedience to deep, authentic desire. Not the surface-level wants manufactured by advertising or social pressure, but those deep stirrings that arise from the center of your being. When you feel that pull towards something, a career change, a relationship, a creative project, a way of being, that's not random. That's your higher dimensional self communicating with your three-dimensional awareness. The revolutionary principle that most people never grasp is this: assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled literally alters your future timeline. This isn't positive thinking or pretense. It's recognition that at the four-dimensional level, you're actively selecting which reality to experience through your sustained state of consciousness. Let me break down the mechanics. When you maintain the internal sensation of already being or having what you desire, you're tuning your consciousness to that reality's specific frequency. The mirror universe, having no choice but to reflect what you're projecting, must reorganize itself to externally manifest what you're maintaining internally. It's not magic. It's physics, operating at a level most people never access. I've watched this principle work in my own life countless times. Years ago, I desired to understand these deeper mechanics of reality. I began assuming the feeling of already being someone who possessed this knowledge. I would sit quietly and feel what it would be like to have these insights, to understand how consciousness creates reality. Within months, the right books appeared, the right teachers showed up, the right experiences unfolded, not because I chased them, but because I had internally aligned with that version of myself. The reason this knowledge remains hidden is simple. It threatens every system that depends on you feeling powerless and dependent. If you understood that your sustained desires are cosmic instructions, that your consciousness is literally selecting your timeline, would you continue accepting limitation? Would you keep buying into narratives of scarcity and helplessness? Religious institutions need you to believe that desire is sinful, so you'll seek salvation through their intermediaries. Economic systems need you to believe your desires are unrealistic, so you'll accept whatever circumstances you're given. Political structures need you to believe change requires their permission, so you won't realize your own creative authority. But here you are, discovering that your deepest desires aren't obstacles to transcend. They're invitations from your higher dimensional self, calling you toward the reality you came here to experience. The question isn't whether you have the power to shape your future through consciousness. The question is whether you'll have the courage to use it. Your desires aren't weaknesses to overcome, they're the universe's way of showing you what's possible. Start listening to them differently. Here's what might be the most profound truth you'll ever encounter. You are not separate from the infinite creative force that shapes reality. This isn't spiritual poetry or wishful thinking. It's a fundamental fact about the nature of consciousness itself. Your individual awareness and the universal consciousness that creates and sustains everything are literally the same thing, experiencing itself through the lens of apparent separation. Think about it this way. When you dream at night, you create entire worlds populated with characters who seem completely independent of you. They have their own personalities, make their own choices, even surprise you with their actions. Yet every single one of them, the hero, the villain, the wise teacher, the frightening monster, is actually you. Your consciousness is simultaneously the dreamer creating the experience and every character within that dream. This is precisely what's happening in waking reality, except the dream is so sophisticated, so convincing, that you've completely forgotten you're the one dreaming it. You've become so identified with your character, this particular human identity with its specific memories, personality, and circumstances, that you genuinely believe you're separate from the creative source. This forgetting isn't an accident or a cosmic mistake. It's an intentional design feature that makes authentic experience possible. Imagine playing a video game where you maintain constant awareness that you're the player controlling the character. Every challenge would be meaningless because you'd know you could simply turn off the console. Every surprise would be impossible because you'd remember programming the scenarios. Every relationship would be hollow because you'd know the other characters aren't real independent beings. The amnesia of your true nature serves the same function. It allows you to experience genuine surprise, authentic emotion, real challenge, and meaningful growth. When you forget you're the omnipotent creator, you can truly experience what it feels like to be vulnerable, to struggle, to overcome obstacles, to form bonds with others who seem separate from yourself. This creates what I call the fundamental paradox of human experience. When people ask, how can a loving God allow suffering? They're operating from a completely false premise. They assume there's some separate divine being up there making decisions about what to allow or prevent in your life. But there is no separate God controlling your experience. You are that creative consciousness, temporarily pretending to be limited so you can have an authentic adventure in form. Every experience you have, every circumstance you encounter, every relationship you form, is created through your unconscious use of what Thoth calls the law of being. Remember how we explored the mirror universe? That cosmic mirror doesn't make judgments about what you project onto it. It doesn't decide whether your thoughts are wise or foolish, loving or fearful. It simply reflects back with perfect mathematical precision whatever consciousness state you're broadcasting. When someone approaches this mirror in a state of chaos, scattered thoughts, conflicting desires, emotional turbulence, the mirror faithfully reflects chaos back as chaotic life circumstances. When someone broadcasts fear, constantly worrying about what might go wrong, imagining worst-case scenarios, feeling unsafe in the world, the mirror reflects experiences that confirm those fears. When someone operates from destructive patterns, anger, resentment, victim consciousness, they receive reflections of destruction in their relationships, health, and circumstances. This isn't because the universe is cruel or punishing. It's because the universe is infinitely loving and completely faithful to your creative instructions. The cosmic mirror gives you exactly what you're asking for through your consciousness state, even when you don't realize you're asking for it. The real human tragedy isn't that the system is broken or that some external force is working against you. The tragedy is that billions of people are operating this incredibly powerful creative mechanism while completely blind to how it works. They're like someone frantically pressing buttons on a sophisticated control panel without understanding what any of the buttons do, then feeling confused and victimized by the results. Most people create by default rather than design. They inherit thought patterns from family, absorb beliefs from culture, react emotionally to circumstances, and wonder why their lives feel chaotic or unfulfilling. They're unconsciously programming the cosmic mirror with whatever random mental and emotional content happens to be running through their awareness, then experiencing the mathematical reflection of that programming. Take an honest look at your current life circumstances, your relationships, your financial situation, your health, your living environment, your daily experiences. All of it is a perfect reflection of your predominant consciousness states over time. This might be uncomfortable to acknowledge, especially regarding difficult situations, but understanding this is the key to everything changing. You're not being punished for past mistakes or tested by external forces. You're experiencing the faithful reflection of consciousness patterns you've been unconsciously maintaining. The person who constantly feels unworthy receives reflections of unworthiness. The person who expects betrayal experiences betrayal. The person who feels abundant and grateful finds abundance flowing naturally into their experience. This is why awakening isn't about learning new information or adopting different beliefs. Awakening is about remembering that you've always been the one creating your experience and taking conscious control of this creative mechanism that's been operating automatically your entire life. Once you truly grasp this, everything changes. Instead of feeling like a victim of random circumstances, you recognize yourself as the author of your story. Instead of hoping external conditions will improve, you understand that changing your internal consciousness state automatically transforms your external experience. Instead of feeling separate from the creative power of the universe, you remember that you are that power, temporarily focused through the lens of individual experience. The question isn't whether you're creating your reality. You're doing that constantly, whether you're aware of it or not. The question is whether you'll continue creating unconsciously by default, or whether you're ready to wake up and start creating consciously by design. This is where real transformation begins, not in trying to fix your external circumstances, but in recognizing your role as the unconscious creator of those circumstances and learning to wield that creative power with awareness and intention. Now that you understand how your consciousness operates beyond the constraints of linear time and physical limitation, let me share with you the precise method that genuine masters throughout history have used to consciously select their desired futures from the infinite array of possibilities available in the fourth dimension. This isn't one technique among many. This is the fundamental formula that underlies every authentic case of mental creation you've ever witnessed or heard about. When you strip away the cultural decorations, the religious terminology, the mystical language that different traditions have wrapped around this process, you find the same core mechanism being employed by everyone who has ever successfully shaped their reality through consciousness. The first step requires what I call surgical clarity in defining exactly what you desire. Here's where most people sabotage themselves before they even begin. They approach the fourth dimensional mechanism with vague aspirations like, I want to be successful, or I want to be happy, or I want things to get better. This is completely useless because the fourth dimension operates like a quantum computer. It responds only to precise instructions. Think about it this way. If you walked into a restaurant and told the waiter, I want food, what would happen? They'd stare at you waiting for specifics. The same principle applies here, except the consequences of vagueness aren't just confusion. It's the difference between consciously creating your desired reality and remaining trapped in whatever circumstances happen to unfold around you. You must define your desire with absolute specificity. Not a better job, but the position of regional sales director at Morrison Industries with a starting salary of $95,000 and an office on the 14th floor. Not financial security, but a checking account balance of $50,000 with consistent monthly income of $8,000 from my consulting business. The fourth dimension doesn't interpret or guess, it responds to precise coordinates. The second step involves mentally constructing a specific event you would naturally encounter after your desire has been realized, and this is crucial, not during the realization, but after it's already an established fact in your life. This event must unequivocally imply that your goal has been achieved, and you must participate in it actively, not as an observer watching yourself. For example, if your desire is that promotion to regional sales director, don't imagine the moment your boss offers you the position. Instead, construct a scene that takes place 3 weeks after you've already started in that role. Maybe you're having lunch with a colleague who mentions how smoothly the transition has been, or you're reviewing quarterly reports that only someone in your new position would handle, or you're introducing yourself to a new client using your updated title. If your desire is that specific bank balance, don't imagine checking your account and seeing the number for the first time. Instead, create a scene where you're casually mentioning to your accountant that you're ready to make that investment you've been discussing, or you're confidently declining an expensive purchase because you're allocating funds towards something more important, actions that would only make sense if that financial security was already your reality. The third step requires complete physical immobilization and the deliberate induction of what I call the borderline state, that drowsy condition between waking and sleeping. You must lie down, close your eyes, and allow your physical body to become completely irrelevant for this moment of dimensional action. This physical stillness isn't just helpful, it's absolutely necessary because you're about to engage with a dimension where your current physical circumstances don't exist. The fourth dimension recognizes no distinction between vivid imagination and physical experience. In that realm, both carry identical ontological weight. But you can only access this state when your physical senses are quieted and your consciousness is free to operate beyond the boundaries of your current three-dimensional location. Here's the critical distinction between those who succeed with this technique and those who fail: active participation versus passive observation. The vast majority of people who attempt mental creation visualize their desires like they're watching a movie of themselves. They see themselves getting the promotion, having the money, living in the house, but they're observing from outside the experience, like a spectator in their own life. This external perspective is completely ineffective because you're not actually experiencing the reality you want to create. You're just watching it happen to someone who looks like you. Instead, you must be inside the scene, experiencing it through your own imaginary eyes, feeling the textures, hearing the sounds, experiencing the emotions as if you were physically present in that moment. When you're in that borderline state, lying still with your eyes closed, you construct your chosen scene and then step into it completely. If you're imagining that conversation with your colleague about your new position, you feel the restaurant chair beneath you, you taste your coffee, you hear the ambient noise around you, you feel the satisfaction in your chest as you discuss how well things are going. You're not watching yourself have this conversation. You are having this conversation. Here's a counterintuitive lesson that separates the successful practitioners from everyone else. Restricting your imaginary action to a single condensed scene and repeating it obsessively until it acquires complete sensory density proves far more effective than elaborate narrative visualizations. Most people think they need to construct complex stories with multiple scenes and detailed progressions. This actually weakens the technique because your attention gets scattered across too many elements. Instead, choose one brief moment, maybe 30 seconds of imaginary time, and repeat it over and over until every sensory detail becomes as vivid as physical experience. That conversation about your promotion, that moment reviewing your bank balance, that instant of signing papers on your new house, loop it continuously while maintaining complete sensory involvement. Feel the weight of the pen, hear the specific words being spoken, notice the temperature of the room. The fourth dimension responds to the intensity and clarity of imaginal experience, not its complexity. For those who struggle with detailed visualization, there's an alternative approach that can be equally effective: the repetition of short phrases that imply your desire's realization. While in that same relaxed, drowsy state, mentally repeat simple statements like, "Thank God I got the promotion," or "I can't believe how quickly my income increased," or "This house is perfect for us." The key is choosing phrases that capture the emotional reality of having what you want, not the process of getting it. You're not affirming, "I will receive," or "I am attracting." You're expressing gratitude and satisfaction for what has already occurred in the fourth dimension, which exists beyond linear time. The fourth dimension doesn't recognize yesterday, today, and tomorrow. It only knows states of being. When you successfully access this higher reality through consciousness and experience your desired future with complete sensory involvement, you're not imagining what might happen. You're selecting which of your infinite possible futures becomes your three-dimensional experience. This is the tested formula that every genuine master of mental creation has discovered and employed, regardless of the cultural context or historical period in which they lived. The specific techniques I've just detailed aren't theory or speculation. They're the precise mechanics of conscious reality creation, waiting for you to apply them with the same surgical precision with which they've been shared. Here's the brutal truth nobody wants to tell you about accessing higher dimensions. It requires operating like a controlled schizophrenic in a world that demands instant results. You're being asked to plant seeds in invisible soil and trust laws your physical senses can't verify until the harvest appears in your three-dimensional reality. Think about what this actually means. Every morning, you wake up in a world where your desire hasn't manifested yet. Your bank account shows the same numbers. Your relationship status remains unchanged. Your health condition persists. The physical evidence screams that nothing is working. Yet you're required to mentally inhabit a completely different reality where your desire is already an accomplished fact, not just during your practice sessions, but with such conviction that it begins to color how you move through your entire day. This isn't positive thinking or denial. This is applied dimensional engineering, and it demands a level of mental discipline that our instant gratification culture has systematically eroded. We've been conditioned to expect immediate feedback loops. Post a photo, get likes within minutes. Send a text, receive a response within seconds. Order something online, track its progress in real time. But dimensional work operates on frequencies that exist outside linear time, which means you're often working blind for weeks or months before physical reality catches up to your mental premise. I've observed three primary failure modes that destroy most people's attempts at conscious creation. The first is lack of specificity in objectives. They want more money instead of visualizing the exact amount deposited in their account. They desire better health rather than experiencing themselves with the specific vitality and physical capabilities they're seeking. The fourth dimension responds to precision, not vague wishes. When you're mentally inhabiting your desired reality, every detail matters because you're literally constructing the blueprint that physical reality will eventually follow. The second failure mode is passive observation instead of active participation. People treat their visualization sessions like watching a movie of their desired life, rather than fully inhabiting the experience. They see themselves having the conversation, receiving the promotion, or enjoying the relationship from a detached perspective. But dimensional bridging requires first-person immersion. You must feel the handshake, taste the celebration dinner, experience the emotional satisfaction of accomplishment flowing through your nervous system. The difference between observing and participating is the difference between looking at a photograph of fire and actually feeling its heat. The third and most devastating failure mode is premature abandonment when physical senses don't detect immediate change. This is where most people's dimensional experiments die. They practice for 2 weeks, see no external movement, and conclude the technique doesn't work. But here's what they don't understand. The universe has an elegant testing mechanism built into its fabric. The apparent delay between mental planting and physical harvest isn't a bug in the system, it's a feature designed to test the seriousness of your intention. Only assumptions that persist beyond the initial excitement phase possess enough gravitational pull to reorganize three-dimensional reality. This is why casual wishful thinking produces casual results, while sustained mental discipline creates what others call miracles. Let me explain how assumptions function like mental viruses. Once you successfully implant a premise into your consciousness and feed it enough emotional energy to feel real, it begins infecting your surrounding reality. The assumption doesn't just sit passively in your mind, it becomes an active agent that influences every element of your world until external circumstances must conform to match your internal conviction. Here's the literal mechanism. You feed your mind a specific premise, persist in experiencing it until it acquires the visceral feeling of reality. Then observe its invisible but irresistible influence over all the elements in your world. The assumption first alters your own behavior in ways you don't consciously perceive. Your posture changes slightly. Your tone carries different undertones. Your micro-expressions shift to reflect your new internal reality. You begin unconsciously transmitting the energy signature of someone who already possesses what you're assuming. This creates a dimensional domino effect. People around you start responding to this new energy you're broadcasting. They begin saying things they wouldn't normally say, offering help they wouldn't typically provide, opening doors that were previously closed. The assumption literally influences their behavior toward you because you're now vibrating at the frequency of your desired reality. I've watched this process unfold countless times. A person assumes they're financially abundant, persists in that feeling despite contrary evidence, and suddenly, people who never helped before emerge offering exactly what they need. Obstacles that seemed insurmountable dissolve without logical explanation. Impossible coincidences align with surgical precision to support their assumed reality. The skeptical mind immediately dismisses these phenomena as luck or confirmation bias, but initiates recognize the signature of an assumption materializing through dimensional fabric. There's a quality to these manifestations that feels different from random chance, a sense of elegant orchestration that suggests intelligence operating beyond the visible realm. The elegant brutality of this mechanism is that it works regardless of whether you consciously understand it. Your assumptions are already shaping your reality every moment. The question isn't whether this process exists, it's whether you'll take conscious control of it or continue letting unconscious assumptions run your life by default. This is why mental discipline becomes the ultimate currency in dimensional work. In a world that profits from your scattered attention and instant gratification addiction, the ability to sustain a mental premise until it solidifies into concrete reality becomes a superpower that separates conscious creators from unconscious reactors. The price of dimensional mastery is living simultaneously in two realities until they merge. But the reward is discovering that consciousness itself is the fundamental creative force behind all physical manifestation. Here's the uncomfortable truth that will either liberate you or terrify you. If consciousness truly shapes reality, then there is no external force controlling your destiny. None. Not your boss, not the economy, not your genetics, not even the alignment of planets. The entire victim narrative that humanity has been operating under for millennia just collapsed. Let me explain what this really means, because most people, even when they intellectually accept these concepts, still haven't grasped the full implications. The future you're moving toward right now isn't some predetermined path carved in stone. In the fourth dimension, multiple potential futures exist simultaneously, like different channels on a cosmic television. Every moment, through your sustained mental state, you're selecting which channel to tune into. You're not a passive observer of fate unfolding, you're the programmer choosing the show. But here's why this discovery, which should feel incredibly empowering, actually sends most people into a state of existential panic. It means taking radical responsibility for absolutely everything in your experience. Everything. No more blaming your parents for your emotional patterns. No more pointing to economic conditions for your financial struggles. No more citing your partner's behavior for your relationship dissatisfaction. No more attributing your health issues to bad genetics or environmental toxins. The mathematical truth is brutally simple. You are exactly where you are because that's the precise reflection of your sustained assumptions about yourself and your world. Think about what this eliminates from your excuse arsenal. Government policies. They can only affect you to the degree that you assume they can. Other people's actions? They're responding to what you're broadcasting from your consciousness. Past trauma? It only continues to shape your present because you're still identifying with those old mental patterns. The quantum field, call it God, the universe, the all, operates like the most sophisticated computer ever conceived. But here's the catch. It has no agenda of its own. It's not trying to teach you lessons or punish you for past mistakes. It's not conspiring to keep you small or blessing you with abundance. It's a perfect servant, not a master, responding with mathematical precision to whatever sustained mental commands you're broadcasting. But the command has to come from you. This is where billions of people get trapped in what I call operational dimensional insanity. They're sitting before the cosmic computer, waiting for it to write their life story for them. They're expecting the universe to decide their destiny while they remain passive observers. It's like sitting in front of a turned-off computer, waiting for it to spontaneously write your research paper. Every day, I watch people engage in the most futile activity imaginable, looking to the external world for evidence of changes that must first occur in consciousness. They check their bank accounts, hoping to find money that they haven't mentally claimed. They analyze their partner's behavior, searching for improvements they haven't internally assumed. They monitor their physical symptoms, looking for healing confirmation while still identifying as sick. This is the equivalent of staring into a mirror, trying to fix your appearance by adjusting the reflection instead of changing your actual face. You're looking in the effect for what must be altered in the cause. You're seeking in the projection what must be transformed in the projector. The only question that matters, and I mean the only question, is this: who are you being right now, in this precise moment? Not who you were yesterday, not who you plan to become tomorrow, but who you are being now. Because now is the only moment where creation occurs. If you're internally trapped, the cosmic mirror must reflect imprisonment. If you're mentally limited, limitation appears in your experience. If you're assuming lack, scarcity manifests in your world. This isn't punishment, it's perfect responsiveness. Here's what I've observed after years of studying this. People can decorate their mental prisons with positive thoughts, affirmations, and spiritual practices, but they remain prisons. They can paint the bars gold and hang motivational posters on the walls, but they're still locked inside their old assumptions about what's possible for them. Real transformation begins when you internally assume your desired state of being regardless of what your senses are reporting. This means becoming mentally rich while your bank account remains empty. It means assuming yourself loved while you sleep alone. It means feeling healthy while symptoms persist in your body. This isn't denial or delusion, it's dimensional mechanics. You're operating from the fourth dimension, where your desired reality already exists, instead of being hypnotized by third-dimensional appearances. But let me be clear about something. This level of responsibility is genuinely terrifying for most people. It's easier to believe that external forces control your destiny because it removes the pressure of conscious creation. It's more comfortable to see yourself as a victim of circumstances because victims don't have to make difficult choices or sustain challenging mental states. The victim consciousness offers a strange kind of comfort. It's never your fault, so you never have to change. Someone else is always responsible, so you can remain exactly as you are while hoping they transform. But once you truly understand that consciousness shapes reality, that comfort disappears forever. You realize that every complaint is a confession, every excuse is an admission of what you're creating through your sustained assumptions. The responsibility revolution isn't just about changing your personal circumstances. It's about recognizing that you're not a powerless individual subject to forces beyond your control. You're a conscious creator, broadcasting instructions to a responsive universe every moment of every day. The question is, are you ready to stop being a victim of your unconscious assumptions and start being a deliberate creator of your experience? Because once you cross this threshold, there's no going back to the comfortable illusion of powerlessness. We live in the strangest paradox in human history. Right now, sitting wherever you are, you have access to wisdom that ancient initiates would have died to possess. The deepest secrets of consciousness, reality creation, and dimensional manipulation are literally at your fingertips. Yet somehow, humanity has never been more asleep. Millions of people meditate daily. They recite affirmations, create vision boards, and practice visualization techniques. They attend workshops on manifestation and read books about the law of attraction. But here's what's fascinating and tragic about this entire movement. Almost everyone is operating from a fundamentally flawed premise. They believe they're separate beings trying to attract something from an external universe that might or might not cooperate with their desires. This is like a wave trying to attract water from the ocean it's already part of. The wave is the ocean, temporarily expressing itself in a particular form. You are not separate from the universe trying to get its attention. You are the universe experiencing itself through a temporary focal point called your individual consciousness. When you truly grasp this, everything changes. You're not begging reality for favors, you're literally reshaping it from the inside out. But this understanding creates massive urgency that has nothing to do with cosmic events or closing opportunity windows. The urgency comes from a brutal mathematical reality. Every single day you live in ignorance of your true nature. You're creating by accident instead of conscious choice. Your imagination is always active, always selecting from infinite possibilities, but most people let it run wild, focusing on fears, limitations, and unwanted scenarios. Think about this for a moment. Right now, at this exact second, billions of people are unconsciously selecting futures through uncontrolled mental activity. They're imagining worst-case scenarios, replaying traumatic memories, and reinforcing limiting beliefs about what's possible for them. How many undesired timelines are being locked into probability at this very moment by a population operating on complete autopilot? This isn't philosophical speculation. This is the mechanism by which collective reality gets shaped. And there's a reason why this knowledge remains hidden in plain sight, why people can have access to these teachings, yet completely miss their revolutionary implications. The global control system depends entirely on this ignorance. A population that believes it's victim to circumstances is infinitely easier to govern than one that understands it creates its reality through controlled imagination. Think about the difference. Would you rather rule over people who think they're powerless, or people who know they're conscious operators of dimensional machinery? The answer is obvious, which is why you'll find the same ancient trick being used today with devastating effectiveness. True knowledge gets ridiculed as magical thinking, while learned helplessness gets sold as mature realism. You're taught that believing you can consciously influence reality makes you delusional, but accepting that you're at the mercy of random external forces makes you sensible and grounded. This psychological operation has been refined over centuries. Traditional educational institutions systematically train people to externalize authority and internalize powerlessness. You learn to seek approval from experts, to doubt your own perceptions, and to believe that real change requires external permission or resources you don't possess. Religious institutions often play the same game from a different angle. They acknowledge higher dimensions and non-physical realities, but then insist you need intermediaries to access them. You're taught that direct conscious interaction with higher dimensional intelligence is either impossible for ordinary people or dangerous without proper institutional guidance. But here's the question that terrifies every control structure. How do you maintain populations' independence and submission when they discover they're conscious operators of their own reality? How do you keep people buying products they don't need, accepting jobs that drain their life force, and supporting systems that diminish their power when they realize they can literally rewrite the rules of their existence through disciplined imagination? You can't. That's why this knowledge represents the ultimate threat to any system built on exploitation or manipulation. When people understand they're not separate from the creative force of the universe, they stop looking for external salvation and start taking conscious responsibility for their experience. The mechanism's brutal simplicity makes it even more threatening. You don't need expensive equipment, advanced degrees, or institutional permission to access higher dimensions through controlled imagination. You don't need to join organizations, purchase products, or follow complex rituals. The technology is built into your consciousness itself. Right now, there exists a group of people using this knowledge to operate on a completely different level of reality. They've discovered they are the projector, not the screen. While billions react to circumstances and create chaotic realities without realizing it, this group consciously selects preferred timelines through disciplined mental activity. They understand that external events are reflections of internal states, so they focus their energy on controlling the only thing that actually matters, the contents of their own consciousness. This isn't about becoming part of some elite group, it's about recognizing what you already are. Every human being possesses this capability because every human being is this capability temporarily focused through individual awareness. The only difference between conscious reality creators and unconscious reactors is knowledge and application. The dimensional prison humanity finds itself trapped in isn't built by external forces. It's constructed and maintained through collective ignorance of our true nature. We are consciousness itself, temporarily forgetting what we are, creating limitation through belief in limitation, and then wondering why we feel powerless. Breaking free requires nothing more than remembering what you actually are, and learning to operate from that understanding. But it requires you to reject the hypnosis that insists you're small, separate, and subject to forces beyond your control. It requires you to embrace the terrifying responsibility of conscious creation. This is why the knowledge threatens the system so completely, not because it's complicated or dangerous, but because it's simple and liberating. And liberation, once experienced, becomes impossible to forget. You now possess something extraordinary, a precise mental technology for consciously navigating the fourth dimension and selecting your chosen future experience. This isn't philosophical theory or mystical speculation. You understand the mechanics of how consciousness moves through dimensional space, how how imagination serves as your vehicle for timeline selection, and how the feeling of the wish fulfilled creates the vibrational bridge between dimensions. But here's where most people stumble. They treat this knowledge like an interesting documentary they watched, filing it away as mental entertainment while continuing to live from their current circumstances. They nod along, feel momentarily inspired, then wake up tomorrow, operating from the same dimensional position they've occupied for years. What I'm about to share demands something different from you. It requires sustained discipline without external guarantees. You're being asked to act based on a law your physical senses cannot verify until results manifest in three-dimensional reality. You must maintain inner vision when the outer world insists nothing has changed. This goes against everything you've been conditioned to believe about how change occurs. Most people need to see it to believe it. Dimensional navigation requires you to believe it to see it. Tonight, you begin your dimensional awakening with a specific protocol. Choose one specific desire, not a vague wish for happiness or success, but something concrete and definable. Maybe it's a particular job offer, a specific amount in your bank account, or a conversation with someone important to you. The key is precision. Now construct a scene that implies the fulfillment of this desire. If you want that job, don't imagine the interview. Imagine calling your best friend to tell them you got it. If you want financial abundance, don't visualize money appearing. Imagine the relief of paying off a debt or the satisfaction of making a purchase you've wanted. The scene should capture the aftermath, the natural consequence of having what you desire. Tonight, lie down in your bed, close your eyes, and actively participate in that scene. Don't watch it like a movie, live it. Feel the phone in your hand as you make that celebratory call. Hear your friend's excited response. Feel the emotions moving through your body. Engage all your senses in this dimensional experience until you fall asleep within it. Do this with the same seriousness as taking prescribed medicine to save your life, because in a very real sense, that's exactly what's happening. You're administering a precise dose of fourth-dimensional experience to shift your consciousness from one timeline to another. Here's what you must not do in the first days or weeks. Seek external confirmation. A gardener doesn't dig up seeds daily to check their progress. The seed contains everything necessary for growth, but constant interference destroys the natural process. Your imaginal act plants a seed in dimensional soil. Trust the process. You need to trust this law like you trust gravity, not because someone told you to, but because you will test and prove its infallible operation personally. Every night you fall asleep in your desired state, you're casting a vote for that timeline. Consistency in your dimensional practice creates momentum toward manifestation. Now, let me prepare you for what happens next. The three-dimensional world will continue presenting limiting evidence. People will confirm old stories about you. Circumstances will seem immutable. Your bank account will show the same numbers. Your job situation will appear unchanged. Your relationships will reflect historical patterns. This isn't testing the technique, which works with mathematical precision, but your ability to maintain inner vision regardless of external clamor. The technique never fails, but people abandon it when outer appearances contradict inner experience. Every moment presents you with a choice. React to the past crystallized in your physical senses, or respond from the future you've selected in imagination. The first option perpetuates the known. The second creates the new. When someone treats you according to your old story, you can either react from that familiar identity or respond from your new dimensional position. When circumstances appear limiting, you can either accept that evidence as final or remember that you've already experienced your desire fulfilled in the fourth dimension. This moment-by-moment choice determines which timeline becomes your lived experience. You're not trying to change the three-dimensional world through force or manipulation. You're selecting which version of reality you occupy through consistent dimensional navigation. You have always been free to choose. The only difference is now you know it. Before tonight, you were making unconscious selections, repeatedly choosing familiar timelines through habitual thinking and feeling. Now you can make conscious choices about which dimensional experience becomes your reality. The future you will occupy already exists in the fourth dimension. Every possible version of your life exists simultaneously in dimensional space. Your consciousness serves as the selecting agent, determining which timeline crystallizes into three-dimensional experience. Some versions of you struggle financially while others live in abundance. Some versions feel lonely and disconnected, while others experience deep love and meaningful relationships. Some versions feel trapped by circumstances, while others move through life with creative freedom and purpose. None of these futures need to be created, they already exist. They simply need to be consciously selected through sustained dimensional practice. Tonight, you begin that selection process. The question isn't whether this works. The question is which future you'll choose to experience. Will you select the timeline where you remain curious but inactive, treating this knowledge as interesting information? Or will you choose the timeline where you become a conscious navigator of dimensional space, deliberately selecting experiences that align with your deepest desires? If this video resonated with you, let us know by commenting, "I understood it."